I'm Di with Sister Chicks Quilting, and welcome to my quilting studio. I'm so glad to teach you about this quilt that's behind me today. It is a two-toned, scrappy Irish chain quilt. Let's talk about all of those words. The first thing, a lot of people have a misconception about scrappy. When you make a scrappy quilt, you're pulling all of your scraps and some of your friends' scraps together, and you use everything. You don't throw out one because you don't like it. You put it in the quilt. That's what makes it scrappy. There's several people that will make a quilt out of a fat quarter bundle or a line of fabric, and it all looks great, and they'll call it a scrappy quilt. In my opinion, that isn't a true scrappy quilt. In several other quilters, it's not either, because the fabric is already coordinated, and there is over 140 different pieces of fabric in this quilt. Does it look like it when you stand back and take a look at it? No, not really, but it is a true scrappy quilt. In fact, even the background is scrappy. All of these lighter colors are scrappy. I happen to be obsessed with scrappy. However, you've got to have a few rules when you're putting a scrappy quilt together, and I'm going to share those rules and tips with you. There are three main things or rules that I follow when I make a scrappy quilt, because even if the quilt is scrappy, you want it to be cohesive. You want a quilt to be pleasing to the eye. You want it to be something that really brings out the emotion in you, rather than just putting everything in a bucket and throwing it out and kind of going, ugh. That has happened before. I have seen quilts that are that way, that I'm just wondering, what were they thinking? And then I never see a design in it or any organization at all. So let's talk about these three rules. The first one that's going to make your scrappy quilt cohesive is a pattern, and it can be any pattern you want. When I set out to make this quilt for this class, I had a vision in my head, and this was it. I want to do a grid of green blocks like this, and then I wanted to put a grid of blue blocks on top of them like this. And I wanted both of those grids of blocks to really shine. So I came up with this Irish chain pattern. But the first time I put it together, it didn't work. It was just a bunch of strips. It didn't cross. And I thought, what did I do wrong? Then I put it together again, and it still wasn't looking the way I wanted it to look. It took me 3 times to come up with this pattern. Here's a green row, here's a green row, here's a green row up here, and then here is a blue row and a blue row. And they do cross. But when this green row crosses this green row, I have the blocks going this way, and I have the blocks coming down and going this way, and you end up with this square. I really didn't want the square. I couldn't come up with any other way to do it. So I was stuck with this square. But you know what? I like it. It gives interest. It gives a little bit of a secondary design to the quilt. So I think it's a good thing. A second thing that makes a quilt cohesive is maybe using the same background. But remember, I wanted a scrappy quilt. So let me show you this scrappy background. Take a look at this quilt, specifically paying attention to the background. When you zoom in a little bit, you're going to see a little more difference. And let's just zoom in one more time. And in this shot, you can see, let's see, 1, 2, 3, 4, I think all 5 of the background pieces that I used are showing in this shot. But when you zoom out, take a look, it's really pleasing. And so now do you understand what I mean about the background? It is cohesive and it is pleasing to the eye. Now, this was my big mistake on this quilt, the color. Don't get me wrong, I love green and blue, and I bet a lot of you out there love green and blue too. But truthfully, is it as hard for you to see that crisscross pattern as it is for me? Do you know why it's hard to see? Let me show you. It's having to do with the color wheel. Here is blue and here is green. And look where they sit on the color wheel, right next to each other. That means that they're analogous colors. And an analogous color just kind of all blends in and plays well in the sandbox with the colors around. And they look really good together. However, I wanted those two different grids to stand out, like kind of pop. So you know what I should have done? Instead of choosing analogous colors, I should have chosen complementary colors. Let me show you on the back of the color wheel. So this is a complementary to blue. It's orange, but also over here, the yellow would have played well too. And I probably should have done that. I didn't want to do orange. We have a local team here, a local college team, and their colors are blue and orange. And every time I make a blue and orange quilt, my friend calls it, "Oh, you're making another Bronco quilt." No, I'm not. I just made a blue and orange quilt. So I stayed away from it because of that one little thing. However, I went with blue and green. And when you really look at it, and maybe in the right light, maybe if you put a filter on it, you can see that crisscross design that I wanted even more. But right now in this quilt, it's just a little bit fuzzy or mushy, and it just really plays nice, doesn't it? So this is not what I wanted for the outcome, but I like the outcome. Does that make sense to you? Anyway, color is very, very important. And you should pay attention to color when you make your quilts, because color evokes emotion and it makes your quilt pleasing to the eye. And when a quilt brings out an emotion and somebody looks at it and goes, wow, isn't that what we want? And then, now that I've confessed all of that to you, would you like to know how to make this scrappy two-toned Irish chain quilt? I'm going to show you. First thing first, I need some 2.5-inch squares. I'm just going to raise my cutting table. I have a few cut here already. How many of you use this Caterpillar lighted handle? It's actually one of my faves. Then I don't have to fight with picking up my ruler. It just comes with it. Also, it lights the way. So while I'm cutting this, take a look at this batik. What's next to green on the color wheel? It would be an analogous color. Who knows out there? It's not purple, it's yellow. Take a look at this piece. Isn't that a cool piece? So the yellow, there's actually a few pieces of yellow in this quilt. And you know what? It works. I'm pretty excited about it. Perfect. I'm going to use my 2.5-inch ruler, and then I don't even have to think about it. And you know what's cool? Is my 2.5-inch ruler has the Caterpillar handle on it that I absolutely adore. And by the way, if this gets in your way, I use it to pick up my rulers. Just take a look at this. You just pop it like that and it comes off, and you just set it down, and you can put it down on the end that you're not using, and boom. Isn't that just the coolest ruler holder? This is the little, I think it's the little glow clamp is what they call it. So it's This has been fun to use these clamps in my quilting studio because nothing's worse than trying to pick up a quilt from your mat and you can't pick it up, and this makes it so easy. I'm just going to set these aside. Let me talk about the pieces that you need. These actually are scraps, so I'm going to remove them. But I have made, and I haven't finished drawing this yet, I will, but I've made a cutting guide, as you can see, and it tells you how many of each color to cut. Now, I've got my blue and green together on this mat, and you're going to cut an identical amount of blue, 200 and 200 green, for this quilt. And it's the background pieces that are different. Here you can see the different background pieces up close. I really only used 5, so I used this one and a plain. This is fun. It's kind of a brocade. I like that. And then in here is, here is this, a little swirl. It looks like quilting. And then I have a bunch of this polka dot. And they worked out pretty good. I just started cutting. I have actually more 2.5-inch squares than I need. But you know what? A cut square is never wasted because I'm always making some scrappy quilt or other. And then you're going to need 2.5 inches by 6.5 inches. These all go in the border that I'm putting around the quilt. I had to end it somehow, so I came up with a border. And then these 4.5 by 6.5 inch rectangles are actually what goes in between the blocks, the rows. One row they go up like this, and the other row they go horizontal. So I've got those, but let's talk about these. Let's just take a look at the blue ones. I don't have as many scraps as my friend Beverly does. Bev has got an amazing collection. For instance, I have several of these, and most of them I've cut out. I've got multiples of them. And I wanted this quilt to be even more scrappy than not. So I've got, as you can see, looks like I have about 10 of these, and I had like 10 of these. And I didn't want to end up having to move blocks around because, I just put this one here and I don't want to use it again next to itself. So I have a lot of the same blocks in here, but I had my 200 cut out of here. And my friend Bev said, hey, why don't I just cut some out for you? Because like I said, she has this incredible pile. So she gave me this pile. And when I started, it was like up here. It was, I think, 120 or 150 of different blues. And every one of these blues is different from the other. It is amazing. You know what's better than a pile of blues that are one of a kind? A pile of greens that are one of a kind. And so I've used her piles way down, and I have been careful to put my multiples in. But I want you to know, these are not wasted. They're going to go in a drawer that I have 2.5-inch squares in, and they will be used. This is the main block that you need for the quilt. It's a 9-patch, and it goes from the top right down to the left, 3 blues, boom, boom, boom. And on the ends are 2 greens. And here it is again, 3 blues and 2 greens. But for every one of these you make, you have to make one that looks like this. Look at this, 3 greens and 2 blues. So I counted the blocks I need and put those out. And then in between these blocks is this cute little 4-patch. The only one I have made up is this green 4-patch. And when I make these up, I try and I go through the scraps that I have, or the squares, and I try and make like too dark, too medium, or too light, or whatever. So for instance, let me show you this one. So here's a 2-patch, and here's another 2-patch, and I would put them together like that, rather than putting them together like that. That's not real pleasing to the eye, but this is, it's interesting. So I've been putting them together like that. And to do the last row, I am going to need 5 of these squares, 3 of them to be green and 2 of them to be blue. So let me go to my machine and I will teach you how to make a really easy 4-patch. What I do is use one of my small design boards and I just make a stack of blocks I want to do. Oh, I like this one. And I just use, so for instance, I'll do 2 lighter toned blocks, and then this one's pretty. I want one that's similar to that. There you go. So there's my green 4-patch, and then I'm just going to chain them together. Ooh, but this is pretty. Is that too disturbing? I feel like this one needs to be. I have so much fun putting these blocks together, and you will too, especially when you have a big group of blocks. I think I'll do that one with it. So I'll take this one out and put that one in. That's a little busy. So I am ready to sew these up, and then I'm going to put together some 9 patches, and I'll show you my method for 9 patches. I don't know if it's any different from yours, but I have a method that keeps it easy. Let's get these sewn up. I don't like to have that little knot of thread on the back, so I use leaders and enders and snips. I just pick them right off of this table or board, and I sew 2 at a time together. It always seems to work out, and I'm sewing at a scant 1/4 inch. Let's turn some light on. These 2 go together, so it just works out good. I don't press until the little piece is done. I know it's pretty brave, right? Stick with me and you'll see brave in action, kids. Here's my big tip. I'm going to press to the dark side, so fold this over, and I'm going to finger press. Now, my really big tip is about finger pressing. See these guys? I love to use my fingernails to finger press. Did you see I turned those right sides together and nested the seams right here? And then you can feel that nested seam so you know you're on the right path. Finger pressing is a temporary thing, and what finger pressing does is encourages the fabric to lay the direction you want it to lay. It is not pressing. However, it's a vital thing when you're sitting here and you don't have an ironing board or a little travel iron next to you. So the tip is finger pressing is just that, finger pressing. It is not pressing your block together. It is nothing like a final press. So finger pressing is just a convenient way to get your fabric seam laying in the right direction. And when it's laying in the right direction, it's easier for you to sew. Do not confuse finger pressing with pressing. That is a really big tip. I'm just going to open this 4-patch up, give it a quick finger press so it lays open, and I can take it to the iron. Now, what do I do when there's a dark and a light side? I just go with it, baby. I just do whatever the block wants to do, okay? So you're all settled on what finger pressing is, right? I should have you repeat it. I'm kidding. I have my my 9 patches all laid out together, and obviously this one on top is a green one because it has 3 greens with 2 blue cornerstones, and then I just filled in the background fabric. Now on my tray also, or my design board, I have a bunch of 2 patches that I've laid out, half green and half blue. I'm going to put those around the edge in the border. Originally, I thought I would make the border out of this. Every other one, I thought that would be so cool to have blue and green 4 patches all the way around it. However, the quilt was going to be bigger too, by the way, but I had to stop. So in my mind, I imagined this big, beautiful quilt. Now it's a nice large lap quilt. You can make this quilt any size. You just need to make sure you have enough of the background fabric. So this was the piece that I actually ran out of. I didn't have any more of the backgrounds. That was 4.5 by 6.5. So that's why I didn't put this around the border. So I just did half of the border, all right? Because I had plenty of these strips. So imagine, well, here's a 2 patch. Imagine a border like this, a background, a strip, a background, a strip. It works out pretty nice, and it just naturally fills in and gives it a cute little border. So here I go. I'm gonna get busy and sew this 9 patch up. Now, when I sew my 9 patches, I always, from like day 1 of quilting, I figured this out, and this is how I always do it. I always start from the left to the right, and I go these 2, these 2, these 2, and then I'm always clipping them off because I'm chaining them, and then I sew this one on. Would you like to see how I do it? And I do it with all of my 4 patches the very same way. I'm sorry, I do it with all of my 9 patches the very same way. This is the first row facing me from top to bottom and left to right. And then I clip these 2 top ones off, keeping them in order, getting rid of this guy. I just fold them open and give them a quick finger press. This is vital to always sew these 2 or press these to the dark side. Now remember, this was row number 3 that I had in my sewing machine, and it went over here. So I'm going to pick up row number 3 and row number 2, right sides together. I'm going to give them a stitch up, but let's sew row number 2 first. Here's row number 3. Then I fold this one open. Give those finger presses a press just so I can lay the fabric the direction I want to, because I'm about to complete this puppy. Turn it over and it will nest. And no, I don't use pins, but if you would like to use pins, please do. You do what works for you. Now, if I pick off row number 3 right here, I have to cut this off because this sews onto that. So I actually come over and start on the next block. See how tricky I am? And just for grins, I'm going to go down all 3 blocks on the second 9 patch. I never have more than 2 blocks on my machine at a time because I don't want to get confused. Finger pressed to the dark side, nest those seams, and I'm going to continue to sew this block. Are you picking up my little system? It works for me, but I'll tell you what you should do. You should do what works for you. I simply share how I do it because some people really appreciate it. And the last one, those 2 go together, and take a look at this. I have a completed 9 patch. There's one down. Now that one, if you noticed, I sewed in or I pressed in, but about every other one, because I want, I just do, I press them all a little different. So this one, the center row gets pressed out. There's always a piece of fabric in there, that 6.5 by 4.5 piece of fabric. So it doesn't matter which way you press them. I just like to do them separately. This is my second to last row, and I'm going to sew it together. I just pulled it off the design wall in order, and I have my very last row pulled off the same way. So I'm going to sew those up just in order and put the quilt together, and then I'm gonna meet you back here and we will do the border and be done. These are my last 2 rows. I've got sewn here, and I'm going to press them. And FYI, they were just finger pressed. I sewed them together, unpressed. This is where you want to iron them really good with your iron, okay? And I'll sew them onto the existing quilt. Then the next step after this is the borders. The borders are going to give it a finished look. Let's go to the machine and sew this on the big piece. It's always real exciting when you're on the last row of your quilt, isn't it? As I have been connecting these, I definitely have pinned these intersections and nested them, because they're going to show. I'm going to see if you don't nest them perfectly and put a pin in them, people will see that you have unmatched seams simply because the background is so light. So I am just pinning. When I press the row that's going to sew on to the next row, I take a look underneath and see which way these seams are pressed. So on this large one, they're going this way. And on this bottom one that I'm just created, they're going the opposite. Therefore, I can easily see how they match, and they slide in with your finger. There's nothing better to feel, unless someone goes gaga for your quilt. But when you're constructing a quilt, it's always reassuring, and you know you're doing a good job when you feel those nested seams as you're pinning them. So I'm going to gather this up, put put this out here on my table and stitch it up. When I sew a seam on, or a new row on, I always back tack. Just that much. I may have told this story before, but my niece was new to quilting, and she was not about to let her seams come apart. So she backstitched and backstitched and backstitched, probably back and forth about at least 5 times on every seam. And then you know what? She kind of gave up. The quilt was for her mother, and that was the wrong block to do. So her mom had to unpick. What a mess that was. So when you back tack, 2 stitches is fine. Last row on, I'm going to press it real quick. To make this border, I'm going to start with a blue square and then sew on one of these strips. I want to sew it in order, so I'm going to use a lot of leaders and enders. So this is the very top of the quilt. Then there's going to be a green one. Now that was kind of sloppy. Diane, you can do better than that. I'm going to be very careful that I line these up perfectly. Then a blue one goes up, lined it up perfectly. I am really liking the looks of this border. Now I need a green one. That's lined up pretty square. Oh, this is getting exciting, you guys. I'm so close to the finish of this. I'm wondering how many of you are going to make this pattern. It's so easy. And when you do, what colors are you going to use? And you can tell me in the comments below. Oh my gosh, one more to do and I'm out of thread. I'm going to run a quick press on this. Well, no, I'm not, because I'm going to sew it on. Yeah, I'm going to press after I'm done. I think that will be easier. Oh, this is getting to be rather big. I'm really excited over the size. There's no telling which way these are all pressed, so I'm going to fold over and finger press as I go. How's that sound? And then I'll press the entire piece when I'm done. Oh, yay. I'm so excited. 2 more borders, just like that one. And this quilt's getting so big. It's bigger than I thought. I'll measure it because I don't even have a clue. And I'll tell you how big it is. Here you have it. All of the borders are sewn on. I think it looks great. But there's one more step I want to share with you. I call it the victory lap. A lot of people don't do this. Now, I didn't start doing it till I became a long arm quilter, but even if you were not going to have this quilt long arm quilted and we're going to free motion quilt it on your machine or however you quilt it, as you're working on it, look at these seams that go to the edge and stop. These can easily pull out. And so I take what I call a victory lap. Some people don't call it that, but I sew all the way around the quilt, about 1/8 of an inch. And I always make sure, pay attention to the way your seams are folded because you want to sew them down correctly all the way around the edge of the quilt. That is going to finish it. It's going to stop any unraveling during the quilting process. you'll be glad you did. So I'm going to go ahead and do that now. Just going to start right here in the middle, because it doesn't matter where we start from. Ta-da! Check this bad boy out. Didn't this turn out cute? Despite the fact that I messed up on the colors and used analogous colors instead of complementary. But you know what? Next time I am going to use complementary colors when I make it, because I love an Irish chain. I love Scrappy. There's room in my life for more of these. I do want to tell you, when I started, I didn't realize how big it was going to be. I didn't even measure. And I would have made it bigger had I had more background squares. But this quilt is 60 wide by 70 inches long. Not a bad size. It wouldn't be hard at all to add blocks on the bottom of the side and make this quilt a little bit bigger. I'm wondering what color you're going to make your two-tone scrappy Irish chain quilt. Would you please tell me in the comments below? I would love to know. And if you're watching this on the TV, you know how to comment, right? On your cell phone. So get your cell phone, log into it, and it kind of syncs a little bit with your TV so you can make comments along with it. I have the highest percentage of you viewers out there watch it on your TV. So hang on to your cell phone right next to you, and you can make comments. Everything else that you can't do is right there on your phone. So I encourage you to do that, and I want you to have a scraptastic day. I love doing Scrappy. You're going to see more of my Scrappy quilts before the end of the year. And until then, bye. You have a great day.